a Roman noblewoman stands before the most powerful man in the world and refuses to back down, knowing full well that defying an emperor could mean death. This is the story of Agrippina the Elder, whose brave protests in 29 CE would shake the very foundations of the Roman Empire. In the early decades of the 1st century CE, Rome was ruled by Emperor Tiberius, a paranoid and increasingly reclusive leader who governed from his villa on the island of Capri. The empire stretched from Britain to the Middle East, but within the imperial palace, deadly political games determined who lived and who died. Agrippina the Elder wasn't just any Roman woman. She was the granddaughter of Augustus, Rome's first emperor, and the widow of Germanicus, one of Rome's most beloved generals. Her bloodline made her royalty, but her character made her dangerous to those in power. She possessed the kind of fierce independence and moral courage that terrified emperors. When Germanicus died mysteriously in 19th CE, while campaigning in the east, many Romans suspected poison. Agrippina certainly did. She publicly accused Gnaeus Piso, the governor of Syria, of murdering her husband on orders from above. This wasn't mere grief-talking. Agrippina had witnessed the political machinations firsthand and understood the deadly game being played. For nearly a decade, Agrippina walked a dangerous tightrope. She raised her 9 children, including the future Emperor Caligula, while navigating the treacherous waters of imperial politics. But by 29 CE, the situation had become unbearable. Tiberius had handed increasing power to Sejanus, the ambitious prefect of the Praetorian Guard, who saw Agrippina and her family as obstacles to his own rise. Sejanus was methodically eliminating potential rivals to his power. He had already arranged the exile or death of several members of the imperial family. Agrippina watched as her friends disappeared, and her supporters were silenced. The net was closing around her, but instead of retreating, she chose to fight. In 29 CE, Agrippina made her stand. She openly challenged Tiberius's authority, accusing him of allowing Sejanus to destroy the imperial family from within. She demanded justice for her murdered husband and protection for her children. Her protests weren't whispered complaints in private chambers. They were public, bold declarations that echoed through the marble halls of the palace and into the streets of Rome. The Roman historian Tacitus recorded her defiant words, "It is not fitting that the descendant of Augustus should fear the plots of a mere freedman's son." She was referring to Sejanus, whose father had been a knight rather than a senator. In the rigid hierarchy of Roman society, this was a devastating insult. Agrippina's protests sent shockwaves through the empire. Here was a woman of unquestionable noble birth, directly challenging the emperor's judgment and policies. Her courage inspired others who had remained silent out of fear. For a brief moment, it seemed possible that the tide might turn against Sejanus. But Tiberius was not a man to tolerate such defiance, especially from within his own family. The emperor, already suspicious and paranoid, saw Agrippina's protests as proof of a conspiracy against his rule. Rather than addressing her legitimate concerns, he chose to eliminate the problem. The consequences were swift and brutal. Tiberius ordered Agrippina's arrest on charges of treason. In 29 CE, she was exiled to the desolate island of Pandateria, the same place where Augustus had once banished his own daughter Julia for adultery. The irony was bitter. 3 generations of imperial women had now suffered the same fate. On Pandateria, Agrippina faced a slow death by starvation. The guards were ordered to prevent her from taking her own life, forcing her to endure a prolonged agony. She died in 33 CE, her body wasted away, her spirit finally broken by years of isolation and deprivation. But Agrippina's story didn't end with her death. Her son Caligula would become emperor in 37 CE, and one of his first acts was to honor his mother's memory. He brought her ashes back to Rome and gave her a magnificent burial. Later, her youngest son Nero would also rule the empire, ensuring that Agrippina's bloodline continued to shape Roman history. Agrippina the Elder's protests in 29 CE represent more than just a family feud within the imperial palace. They demonstrate the dangerous courage required to speak truth to absolute power, and the terrible price that such courage often demands in the halls of empire.